Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Pam Olson. We're filming this from PwC's 6th Annual International Tax Conference. And joining me today is Chip Harder, who served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Tax Affairs from 2017 to 2020. Chip, welcome to Policy on Demand.
Thank you, Pam. Great to be here.
It's good to have you. We're going to talk about Treasury's agenda and what should be on Treasury's agenda. And since you had responsibility for helping to set Treasury's agenda for several years, I'd like your thoughts about what should be at the top of Treasury's agenda for the next couple of years. We've had a lot of talk about how legislation is unlikely during the current Congress because of the split between the House and the Senate and the White House, different parties in control, and maybe not a lot of bipartisan legislation. But that's not going to stop Treasury from needing to continue to work. So what do you think should be at the top of their agenda?
Well, a priority should be addressing the creditability of the Pillar 2 taxes that U.S. multinationals will start paying over the next couple years. The preambles to the foreign tax credit regs state that the Treasury intends to re-examine those regulations in light of a OECD agreement. And now that Pillar 2 is going forward, it's time to get on with it. With respect to QDMTTs, this should be a fairly straightforward determination, I think. QDMTTs are in the nature of an income tax imposed by a country on income within its borders. And in order to avoid double taxation, it will be necessary for the U.S. to give a credit for QDMTTs against GILTI liability. So, this should be easy, but confirmation would be great. UTPRs are a more complicated issue. On one hand, given that Treasury agreed specifically to the imposition of UTPRs, despite the lack of any requirement of nexus in UTPRs, one might think that the Treasury would waive the attribution requirement in the current regulations to allow UTPRs to be credited. But on the other hand, the very architecture of Pillar 2 allows GILTI taxes to be credited against UTPR liability. So if the U.S. were to grant a credit for UTPRs against GILTI liability, we'd get ourselves in a circular computation. So I just don't think that's going to happen. But I do think those should be, priority issues on the regulatory front.
Okay, and so those are addressed by regulations. We don't need Congress to step in and legislate on any of that. So that's something that's completely within Treasury's bailiwick to handle. So let's assume that there is a legislative window that opens in 2025. Obviously, we've got a lot of provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that will expire in 2025. And that alone is likely to create an impetus for Congress to do something, at least reconsider some of those expiring provisions. So what should Treasury be looking at, proposing? And I want to emphasize something I heard from Bill Thomas, who was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee back in the days when I was at Treasury. The president proposes and Congress disposes. So Congress isn't necessarily going to follow the administration's lead, but they certainly appreciate the administration putting some things on the table. So what should Treasury be looking at?
The Treasury should be looking forward to an opportunity to address these issues. And by 2025, U.S. multinationals will be subject to both the current GILTI and to top-up taxes under, the QDMTTs, under intermediary IIRs, under UTPRs, and all with respect to income of their CFCs. With respect to their domestic income, they'll be subject to the CAMT, the BEAT, a possible UTPR with respect to domestic source income, all in addition to their usual corporate income tax. And now, no one would have intentionally designed an architecture with so many complex, overlapping, multiple regimes. And in addition to the sheer complexity of applying all these regimes simultaneously, there is a real possibility of significant double taxation as we try to apply these multiple regimes to a common income tax base or a tax base. So we clearly need legislation to sort this mess out, at the first opportunity by 2025, if not before.
Chip, thank you so much for joining me for this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Pam.
And as always, thank you for spending your time with us. We'll see you next time.